Guys, I finally had the time to watch Adrien Broner versus Theophane, and I wanted to make a video. Before I had the chance to watch it, I received several messages on Facebook, on Twitter, with people giving me their thoughts on the fight. And it really seems that this fight has split the YouTube boxing community. Half the people I've heard say this was nothing more than a glorified sparring session. Theophane is a sea-level fighter, and Adrien Broner was pretty dominant in there. Half of the people were saying that Theophane was causing Adrien Broner all sorts of problems, and Broner got extremely lucky to get the stoppage, and Theophane was ahead on their scorecards, or even on their scorecards, and had the momentum. So I wanted to check it out for myself. Let me take it round by round initially, and then I'll come on to some more general points. I actually scored Adrien Broner the first 5 rounds, all of them, and that may be controversial. I appreciate that these rounds were extremely tight. Some of the rounds in particular, there wasn't too much in it. So it's going to be one of those where I can see why there is a bit of controversy and why there is some debate over how the fight was going. Because when you get those tight rounds, it depends what you prefer in terms of who you score. And don't get me wrong, whilst I thought some of them were clear Adrien Broner rounds, there are also some early rounds that you could have made a case for Theophane. All in all, I just felt that Adrien Broner was the general in there. I felt he was controlling the pace. I felt he was landing the more powerful, more meaningful shots. And I thought he looked the sort of calm, more competent operator who was both the harder puncher and the better boxer. In the first round, Broner came out, tight guard, high guard, got the jab established, started throwing the lead hook, which was an effective weapon. And that lead hook in the first round, I think that made Theophane aware that Broner carried decent power. In the second round, we saw the guys engaging a bit more. Bombs were sort of exchanged, both guys were throwing, and it was a tight round. But for me, Adrien Broner's bodywork was a real part of that second round, and I scored it to him based on that. And that bodywork continued to be a factor throughout the course of the fight. And Broner was throwing, it was a weird punch really, he kind of pivoted into it. It was like a cross between a hook or kind of like a sort of 45-degree angle punch that he would get low and throw up to the body, but it looked like a real decent rip and seemed to carry some power, and I think that was really having an effect on Theophane early on. So I scored the second round to Broner. Third round, I thought again Theophane came out, started putting the pedal to the metal, threw a lot of lever, and was definitely ahead halfway through the round. But I felt really that Adrien Broner just started to nick the round, based on the more effective work, the higher quality of work, and the fact that he was able to hurt Theophane. I thought Theophane was the more active fighter, but I thought Broner's shots were so much more accurate, so much more snappy, so much more threatening. And I really did think AB was starting to hurt Theophane at this point of the fight. And you could see that, because by the end of the third, fourth round, Theophane's face was pretty bust up. And in the third round, we saw Adrien Broner, he'd established his jab, he'd established that left hook, he'd started to bring in the bodywork. In the third round, we started to see a bit more variety as well. He started throwing a bit of an uppercut, which is always a weapon of his, and, he was looking good. He was looking good. And on to the fourth round, I thought Broner was timing Theophane nicely. I thought he was hurting him. He hurt Theophane with a sweet, sweet uppercut in that round. Fifth round was very tight. Could have gone either way. I just sided to Adrien Broner. And then from there onwards, Theophane came into the fight. So round 6, I scored to Theophane. Round 7 and 8, tight rounds. I was possibly inclined to side with Theophane between rounds 6 to 8, based purely on activity. So I guess you could make a case that going into round 9, where the fight was stopped, Theophane was 5-3 down on the cards. I don't think it's appalling to have it 4-4. Could you make a case that Theophane just about did enough in the first or in the fifth? Maybe. But for me, Broner was in control. And although 5-3 suggests it was a competitive fight, which it was, and although Theophane winning the last 2 or 3 rounds on the bounce also suggested the momentum was shifting in his balance, at no point watching the fight did I really think realistically Theophane was in with a chance of winning the fight. Broner looked calm, he looked under control, he looked to be fighting at a pace he was happy with. Yeah, obviously he'd cut a lot of weight, Broner, and there was some concern that he'd gas and run out of energy. He was certainly becoming lower output, but for me he just looked smarter than Theophane. You know, his timing was better, his punches were harder. His, you know, he just seemed to be a little bit of a step ahead. And even though Theophane was maybe sneaking rounds by a little bit of activity, at no stage did I really think Theophane was going to go out and beat Adrien Broner and, you know, take 7 of 12 rounds or knock Adrien Broner out. Yeah, and there were numerous instances in the fight where Theophane looked like he was doing enough to win a round, but I just felt Broner was able to put in 20 seconds of work and really hurt Theophane and, you know, rough him up and put him on his back foot. And that's why I was kind of siding to Broner's work in this fight. You know, I thought Broner actually on the whole looked good. You know, Theophane was game, Theophane was tough, you know, durable, he hadn't been stopped before. And I thought on the whole, Broner was doing a pretty good job of outboxing a guy who's known as a boxer. You know, this is a guy who supposedly caused Danny Garcia all the sort of problems he could handle. You know, Theophane, spirited. For me, his punches were a bit wide. He was slapping a bit. And he was being outboxed as a result. He was getting pretty bust up in the early rounds, but he showed heart. You know, Broner for me, good accuracy, good timing, good jab, good lead hook, good body work, good uppercut. The negative, you'd have to say, was the movement. You know, Broner is a slightly flat-footed fighter, and that lack of elite-level movement around the ring is the main differentiator between him and a, you know, top elite fighter for me. Going into the 9th round then, you guys will already have seen it by now. Obviously Adrien Broner won the fight by stoppage. Let me say, I can see both sides of the argument here. Had I been the referee, would I have jumped in at that particular point? No. At that point, although Broner was winning the 9th round, and he did definitely hurt Theophane and shake him to his boots, you know, Theophane had been coming on strong. As I say, there's an argument he won the 6th, 7th and 8th round. Theophane's a tough, durable guy, and I don't think Theophane was actually close to being rendered unconscious by Adrien Broner. And had the referee not stepped in, I could actually have seen Theophane surviving the round. I could have seen Broner being a bit low output and not quite pulling the trigger, and I could see Theophane staying on in the fight. You know, he's a fit guy, and losing in a tight points loss, 7-5, 8-4, something of that. You know, Theophane was hurt, but we'd seen him hurt at several points in the fight. You know, I don't think he was dramatically more hurt than he'd been in the 3rd or 4th round, and you know, he was putting some space between him and Broner. And I think the referee maybe jumped in a little bit too soon for my liking. What I would say is when Theophane was trying to escape and put space between himself and Broner when he was hurt, he was quite literally running. As in, you know, as a boxer, you kind of, if you're hurt, you'd think you wouldn't totally abandon the way you move. So you'd still think you'd have your guard up, you'd be moving back, giving angles, you know, shifting one leg back. Theophane kind of turned his body a bit and almost ran away from Broner. And I think in doing that, he caused himself to look unbalanced. He caused himself to look panicked. And he also caused himself to abandon his defences. You know, if a fighter moves back, you know, trying to put space, and, you know, imagine how like an Erislandy Lara or a Floyd Mayweather would move back and try and create space and try and throw a bit of lateral movement and side to side. for me, Theophane almost turned his back. He didn't quite turn his back, but he sort of moved in that direction and almost tried to sprint across the ring. And I can see why a referee would jump in, because for me that is a distress signal. That is a sign that a fighter's badly hurt, and I think maybe the way he decided to try and escape from Broner made him look unbalanced and like he'd been wobbled, like he was on weak legs. So I can see why the referee jumped in. Had the referee let it go on, I'm not utterly convinced Broner would have found a punch to knock Theophane out. Broner clearly was hitting hard. He's a hurtful puncher. I do think he was hurting Theophane in there to the body and with the uppercut. And, I think Broner was troubling Theophane with his power. I didn't sense an imminent knockout. Broner didn't seem to have the one punch to take Theophane out. And Theophane is tough and durable. And let's not forget, he hadn't been dropped or anything like that. For me, it was a debatable stoppage. But Theophane gave the referee an excuse to stop it, when he turned his back. And these days, especially with what's been highlighted in the sport recently with the Chris Eubank Jr. Nick Blackwell fight, if you abandon your defences like that, and if you throw out anything that could be construed as a distress signal, you're in trouble, and you're giving the referee a way to stop the fight. Just briefly, I want to talk about the weight. Broner, as we know, missed weight. It's talk that he's going to go up now to 147. I've long said that Adrien Broner's unbeaten at 140 pounds or less. He's only ever lost when he stepped up to welterweight, and I personally just don't think he's got the size to deal with guys like Porter and Maidana. The two guys who've beaten him have kind of ragdolled him. They've big-manned him. They've just been physically stronger, bigger, more powerful men, and they've played rugby with him. They've thrown him around the ring. They've overpowered him, and for me, that could easily happen again. Broner was looking very, very big in the ring last night. There's some reports on some forums he was weighing 170. Crazy in boxing that a world light welterweight champion could actually enter the ring as a light heavyweight. From light welterweight to light heavyweight. Whether he actually was 170 or not, I don't know. But when he was being interviewed in a post-fight, side on, his shoulder, his biceps, his chest, he looked like a powerful guy. He didn't look like a 10-stone guy. And at the weigh-in, even though he weighed in heavy, even though he looked drained, I don't know if he'd been dehydrating, he didn't look overly ripped. It wasn't like he'd cut every last ounce of fat off him. So he's a heavy guy, but I think in terms of his frame, he's no more than 140 pounds in terms of his frame. And I think that's important, stepping up to 147. I think Broner really is a threat at 140. He's a smart boxer, he brings a lot of tools, and he carries power. He can hurt people at 140. I'm not sure he carries the same power at 147 against the bigger, stronger men. And I think he can be hurt easier. And I think he can be pushed around a lot easier. I think Adrien Broner really could win the majority of fights at 140, Terence Crawford aside. Maybe Victor Pistola aside, I don't know. But he's up there with those guys. I'd say they could be the top three. At 147, I have severe question marks over Broner, and I worry that what happened to him against Maidana and Porter could happen again. Broner-Danny Garcia, which is the fight he seems to want at 147, is an interesting matchup, however. And stylistically, I may actually side to Broner in that one. Broner, he's the superior boxer there. Danny Garcia is one of these guys. He looks very beatable, but clearly he's very, very good, and he's a lot harder to beat when you're actually in the ring with him. But part of me thinks Adrien Broner may be too smart and sophisticated for Garcia in there. But that could be an interesting fight. But in general, I'm sceptical about the move to 147. I think it's out of laziness. I think it's out of lifestyle and not cutting the weight rather than what's best for his career. Let me know your thoughts. Is the problem back? How did you rate the fight? How did you score the fight before the stoppage? What did you make of the stoppage? And where do both guys go from here? Let me know your thoughts. Many thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed this, do hit the thumbs up. Do subscribe to the channel. Thanks.